Welcome, welcome, guys. Thank you for coming. This is our meeting number 19 for 2024, May 9th. East Oakland Community Emissions Reduction Plan, our SERP, is now open for business. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for being online. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So let's get it, guys. Okay. So in the beginning, we're going to have the interpretation instructions. We'll go ahead.
Thank you so much. This is Mercedes, your Spanish interpreter. I'm going to give instructions in Spanish and then I will also give instructions in English. Hola a todos, bienvenidos. Tenemos interpretación en español disponible. Para seleccionar su idioma, si está usando un dispositivo móvil, por favor toque su pantalla, seleccione los 3 puntos, seleccione idioma de interpretación, seleccione español y para finalizar su opción, por favor seleccione finalizado o done en inglés. Si está utilizando una computadora, ver un globo ubicado en la parte inferior de su pantalla, por favor haga clic en el globo, seleccione español y listo. Muchísimas gracias. Hello everyone, welcome. This is your Spanish interpreter. We have interpretation available. So we encourage monolingual English speakers to select the English language option to be able to hear the interpretation if a Spanish speaker speaks. So to select your language, if you're using a mobile device, please tap your screen, select the 3 dots, select language interpretation, select English, and to finalize your option, please select done. If you're using a computer, you will see a globe at the bottom part of your screen. Please click on the globe, select English, and you're done. Thank you so much. And you can start.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for our interpretation instructions. We're going to go ahead and move on. Welcome, welcome, CSC members. This is number 19. How you guys feeling tonight? You know, we got a little Everett and Jones over here, so we're feeling great. I would like to welcome you on behalf of the co-chairs. I'm Ayana Johnson, Charles Reed, he's in the building. And we also have Michaela Patton. Is she online? Yes.
Yeah, I'm on Zoom.
Hey, we got her on Zoom. So you guys, we're going to go ahead and get started with this meeting. Okay. So we have our meeting objectives. So CSC members will gain more insight and knowledge from West Oakland and Richmond CSC members on their SERP processes. So CSC members will have a better understanding of CARB's authority and CARB-led strategies from other SERPs. Wonderful. CSC members and community will continue brainstorming focus area statements and strategy objectives for this evening. Also, our meeting agenda. Welcoming agenda was 10 minutes. You know, we have a recap of our April CSC number 18. Then we have a presentation and discussion with CSC members from Richmond, West Oakland SERP development processes. Then we get a break. Car presentations, transportation, mobile services, and SERP strategies. And then we'll strategy to follow up and brainstorm on transportation and mobile sources, air monitoring, grant announcement, and next steps, and then the closeout, guys. So our initial meeting agreements and those for the participation, we have 1 mic, 1 voice. If in person, raise your hand. On Zoom, use the raise hand function and under the reaction on the bottom of your screen. We're going to have grace for ourselves and one another. Take care of yourself. Make sure you stretch, drink water, take a break. Mutual respect, empowerment, and active listening for the participants to allow everyone to participate. Limit your time to a speaking time of 2 minutes. We'll be actively doing reminders and alerts throughout the evening. So popcorning is our thing. We're passing the mic method will be used to encourage participate amongst quieter CSC members. For any questions throughout the meeting, if in person, please raise your hand and ask a question. If on Zoom, in addition to hand raising, you may also use the Zoom chat. CBE and backman staff will be responding to all questions. So community building, in-person attendees are encouraged to interact with fellow participants during the dinner meet and greet. Virtual attendees, please type in a Zoom chat, put your name, your pronouns, and any affiliated organizations. Community building on Zoom, excuse me. Use chat and reaction emojis to inspire and encourage one another. So CSC members, please raise your hand if you're not able to type into the chat and we will have you speak aloud. Okay. I'm going to have Alicia take it over.
Thanks, Ayana. Hi, everyone. Good evening.
This is Alicia from the Air District and just wanted to ground us all in where we are today. So as you've seen, this is our SERP timeline. We are currently in Q2 of 2024 and in the light blue phase of Plan R solutions. So we are focusing on strategy development. Tonight, CSE members from West Oakland and Richmond, North Richmond, San Pablo will discuss their experience related to their process and strategy development. We'll also hear more about transportation and mobile sources from our partners at the California Air Resources Board about their authority and SERP strategies from other AB 617 communities across the state. We'll also follow up on strategy work by diving in deeper into the transportation and mobile sources focus area and brainstorm about concerns that we've already heard from you. And I can pass it to Carly to get us started.
Hey everyone, my name is Carly. Sorry, I was just eating. I'm with CBE and just going to give a recap of last meeting from April, which was CSC number 18. So just going to go over the objectives of April CSC meeting for the breakout activities that is going to lead to the SERP. So the objective of the breakout activity on West Oakland and the Richmond SERP that we did last time was to increase understanding of what can be included in a SERP and what a SERP can accomplish. And then the objective of the other breakout activity that we did, the second one on furthering strategy development, was to synthesize the strategy writing in order to form the focus area statements and to document the strategy writing, to inform the SERP. And just want to give some background on what the breakout activities from last time led to the prep for this meeting. So the breakout activity, the first one from last time on West Oakland and Richmond SERP, prepared CSC members to start thinking about questions to ask the West Oakland and Richmond CSC members. So thanks for being here, panelists, and excited to hear what people have to ask from East Oakland. And then the second breakout activity from the last meeting in April was on furthering strategy development, was to prepare CSC members to continue to write strategy development for the SERP through different focus areas. And in today's meeting in particular, we're going to focus on the focus area of transportation and mobile sources. Thank you. And I'll pass it to Michaela.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, y'all. Yeah, my name is Michaela Patton, and I am the youth co-chair for the East Oakland AB 617 process. So yeah, I'm going to be the moderator for the panel today, which is really exciting. The panel is going to be about 45 minutes. And yeah, I think I'm just going to kind of launch into introducing our panelists. So we have 3 panelists here. And yeah, we have Marisol Cantu, who is a 3rd-generation Richmond resident, also a co-lead for the AB 617 process for Richmond, North Richmond, San Pablo, and also is the co-lead for the fuel refining writing group. We have Alfredo Angelo, who was raised in Richmond, and they work to advance environmental justice efforts and build a sustainable future. Also really passionate about connecting community and residents with decision makers and different knowledge and access to power. And then finally, we have Richard Groh, who is a member of the West Oakland Steering Committee. He's been a member since 2019. He retired from US EPA in 2019 after several decades working in the air program, and for the last 22 years has been focused on environmental justice and civil rights, and has been supporting environmental justice work in West Oakland since 2001. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to the panelists now to give their opening remarks. So yeah, Marisol, you can start us off.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marisol Cantu. I just want to uplift y'all's meeting objectives. Incredible. I also love how engaged y'all's chat is already. So things that I'm learning from your meeting that I'm excited to bring into Richmond and North Richmond. So a little bit about my area of focus and coming into this, I'm environmental justice advocate and activist here in Richmond. Although I didn't know of that at a really young age, I was exposed to the pollution. In particular, my baby brother spent his first year in and out of the hospital on asthma treatments, and yet I never understood that that was because we were living in a frontline community. I thought it was just normal that all of my friends and family had asthma inhalers, shared asthma inhalers, always were um, struggling to breathe. And so when I became an adult and started really understanding systems and the work that all of y'all are doing, I decided reluctantly to join the Path to Clean Air. This is not necessarily my yay, air district, want to do this. It was a lot of young people that called me into the space, like Alfredo and some of our youth members, to really kind of interrupt and kind of better understand how community can be centered from some of the agencies and stakeholders in the area. So I'm really here to help y'all understand what y'all want to understand. No question is insane to me. It's all new. It was new to me. And I think between Richard, Alfredo, and myself, there's a wealth of knowledge here, all with really incredible perspectives and lived experiences. So check.
Thank you, Marisol. Yeah, Alfredo. Is Alfredo here? I don't think they're pinned.
Right here. Sorry, y'all. I'm gonna stay off camera for most of this, just to preserve battery. But very happy to be here with y'all. My name is Alfredo. I use they them pronouns. I am one of the members of the Path to Clean Air steering committee in Richmond. I was one of the co-chairs from essentially our first meeting up until our meeting last month, where we finally transitioned to new leadership, which is really exciting to see. But yeah, I mean, I came in to this work. Maybe I'll give you a second to pin. Yeah.
Yes, you're pinned now.
Okay. Yeah, I similarly came into this work, having grown up in Richmond. It's pretty difficult to not see the ways in which environmental injustice and environmental racism, to be explicit, is very present in the community. Whether it's the legacy of the fuel refining industry or the railroad, or shipbuilding in Richmond, there's a lot of ways in which our community is experiencing the negative effects of war and like unchecked capitalism that are often overlooked. Yeah, I learned about this process from a colleague, we'll say, who was a part of like the original group that created the CSC. But similarly, I mean, I had never really done any work with the Air District. I was a student government kid in college, so I studying political science, know very well the importance of like operating within the government in certain spaces, obviously recognizing the very, very difficult limitations of working within governmental structures, which I think I've shared with y'all, I think on a call earlier, probably at some point last year when y'all were deciding whether to be Brown Act or not. But with all that being said, yeah, I'm excited to be able to share some information with y'all. Hopefully, I can share some stuff that's helpful today. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfredo. And yeah, last but not least, Richard.
I'm Richard Groh, and as noted, I worked for EPA for a long, long time and retired almost 5 years ago, at which point I became actual member of the West Oakland Steering Committee. But also, as Michaela pointed out, I've been working with West Oakland and in West Oakland. I do not live there. I live in Berkeley, but I've been working in and with these folks for the last 22, 23 years. When my boss at the time, Jack Broadbent at EPA, assigned me to go figure out how to work with these folks and let's develop a collaborative relationship. To me, it was quite exciting because before I was here, I'm from Detroit, and I thought this is sounds like going back home, and in a lot of ways it was. My involvement going back to 2001, 2002 had to do with us developing, and this has to do with, I think, why I keep getting tagged every now and then by West Oakland to keep talking about this. I was assigned to go, let's develop a collaborative relationship, but frankly, the agency I worked for had no clue what that meant. So working with West Oakland, we developed a collaborative methodology and a partnering agreement and a whole approach. And at that point, the tables we convened around the collaborative table were truly multi-stakeholder. It was like everybody was invited to the table, whether they were the problem, the solution, or anything else. So that's where I'm coming from, is that experience. And as far as what all we learned from that, I don't know, it comes out in conversation. So I'm just excited to have been invited to be part of this conversation, and let's see where it goes. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks y'all, and thanks for all of the work that y'all do in all your respective communities, and excited to see all the connections and like regional ties, but also like specific community strategies. So this panel is going to kind of be divided into two sections. The first section, I will say we're tight on time, so not going to try to interrupt anyone, but I am the facilitator and the moderator for right now, so I'm going to try to do my job. So yeah, but the first kind of set is going to be kind of a roundtable. So I have a set of 3 questions that are core questions that East Oakland members really wanted to hear from y'all from. You're going to have about a minute to respond to each question. And then the next section is going to be kind of an open discussion, open Q&A. So you'll have more time to expand on any topics that you weren't able to get to in the core questions. And also East Oakland CSC members, as well as any other folks on the call, will be able to ask their own questions. So I'm just going to hop into it. I'm also going to paste the question, or try to paste the question in the chat, because I know sometimes that's helpful. Feel free to, popcorn. It doesn't have to be the same order we started with. We love the natural flow and vibe of everything. The first question, though, is we just want y'all to tell us a little bit about your experience in the CERP process and really developing the CERP. What was the process of getting what you all wanted from the CERP? How did you prepare the strategies? And what do you think are some of the best strategies in your plan or in your CERP? And then specifically for Richard, because as we may know, West Oakland is in the implementation phase. Where does West Oakland specifically see the most impact in their neighborhood? So I know that was a lot, but yeah, I pasted it in the chat also, and whoever wants to get us started can go for it.
I'll quickly jump in. I joined and started with the fuel refining because that was my interest. So interest is just really, really important. Like what you're passionate about, some people love transportation and wanted to go that route. I think the more that you're passionate about something, the more that you'll drive like really, really good strategies. Also, I saw that I had a skill set that was needed, that there was a gap within fuel refining. And I realized this is some technical work that I had already known. These are skills that I have as a community organizer, as a teacher, that I can be able to break down some of the technical information and make it more digestible to the community. So I saw myself giving the most in the fuel refining group. And so that, I think, is what helped me become like moved the way that I moved within fuel refining. I also felt that because I had such a passion, when anybody talks about their passion, whether it's cats or dogs or wine or whatever it is, that people are always going to relate to that and they'll want to be involved. And so I felt that it was an opportunity for me to empower folks that maybe felt a little intimidated by some of the technical information, which I did as well, and by some of the skills, and really see where their strengths and growth areas were so that I could help empower them to be the best CSC members. And that's a little bit, and I'm going to check and pass maybe.
Thank you. Yes, Richard or Alfredo?
can jump in to add. I think yeah, I think the way that I was looking at the question was a little more like what was the process like, which I don't know if like that would be more helpful, but I think like in that kind of in the nature of Mighty Soul's response, like I think a lot of the early part is like a lot of like learning that can be really heavy, and so I think like it it was really helpful in the beginning to kind of get an idea for like what parts of the work different folks were like more passionate about and would feel more comfortable kind of leading and really owning as community members. Like our other co-chair Ianad is like a communications person, and so she had a big interest in that. We have folks like our wonderful CSC member Dave Severy, who is really into like transportation and like active transportation accessibility, and so I think like early on trying to figure out like what things like kind of like come natural to us to lead in, I think is really helpful. Like early on, we also established like our vision and principles chapter of the plan, which helped us establish like a North Star, like what do we want to compare or yeah, like what do we want to compare these strategies to in terms of like the sort of commitments that or the sort of ideas, the vision that we have for this plan, like I think part of ours mentions like restorative investments in the community. And so like part of that like early visioning, I think, is really helpful for giving yourself a good starting point, but also having something to look back at and continue like looking at towards for motivation.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I always feel so bad. But like
no,
I
that's
said,
a great way of doing it.
y'all are gonna have more time to expand on the points also. So yeah, Richard.
I guess looking back at where we came from in West Oakland, as noted, it comes from many years back. But to me, part of what was exciting being allowed to go out there and work with the community of West Oakland is finally to have a premise around to get everybody around the table. Because in my outside of work life, I was from the world of straight up advocacy, us going against those folks and trying to get what we want. This at that time was an experiment. Let's get everybody around the table and see if we can actually do some problem solving and what would that look like. So I think that to me is what came out of this. Is like we're a couple decades into it now, but I find the folks in the community actually come at every problem. Their starting point is let's talk about it. Let's see if we can combine our authorities, our discretion, that and figure out a way forward. If not, then we'll see you in the street. We'll see you with a picket line. We'll see you in court. But I think the main spirit of it, Miss Margaret Gordon, who I've always seen as not only a collaborator, but a militant collaborator, is we'd like you at the table, but you can either be at the table or you can be on the menu, but we're going to be dealing with this problem. And so to me, it's been an exciting ride. Just what does collaborative problem solving actually look like? And how do you build that? And that's the starting point. Like I said, it's been a long ride. We've learned a lot along the way. I would point out that we do think there's very specific principles that need to apply, and partnering agreements. Trying to proceed without a partnering agreement is foolhardy in our experience. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. And just because it was specifically asked by East Oakland CSC members, can you talk a little bit about the implementation phase and kind of where you feel you're seeing impact in the community right now? If you have any thoughts on that, Richard.
Oh, well, I think Brian Moore posted the 84 or so strategy thing there that came out of a year and a half or so of brainstorming. What do you want to do? That sort of thing. But as far as what's actually had the most impact, it goes back to this was a port adjacent community. So the real progress, if you want numbers and emission changes and all of that, had to do with port issues, truck issues, traffic kinds of issues. I don't know what the lay of the land looks like right in the domain of East Oakland there. So that's the real money payoff. But actually the real payoff, I think, personal view, I think Miss Margaret or Brian Beveridge would express their thoughts a little differently. The real payoff has been an overt and specific commitment to long-term involvement. We are many years into this, but as West Oakland sat there across from the agencies, we both knew, I think, that we're in this. My bosses, when they first assigned me, they said, "Oh, it's just this is a 2-year thing." And anybody who knows reality knew that's ridiculous. 2 years is short. To me, it was like a minimum 10-year commitment. And so I guess I want to say there's the real payoff, but another way of saying that, personal view, there's no real payoff unless there's a long-term commitment, ability to keep working it out with each other. It'll get rocky. And recognize capacity all around the table, and especially at your Bay Area district partners there. There's a lot of capacity to be tapped.
Thank you. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, definitely. So lots of similar themes around passion, finding your like natural inclination, natural interest, and also some intentional commitment from the Air District and other stakeholders. Okay, so the second question is, what are some areas you were not able to focus on in your SERP or in the process that you think your community and maybe East Oakland would benefit from? So yeah, if you could do it again, what are things that you would like want to include this time around?
You're asking everybody, right?
Everyone. Yes, yes.
Well, I'll just offer an observation from West Oakland. I think I've heard from the longtime organizers that I think they wish they would say they could have used more time to actually build the community involvement, more membership, actual local, and that's the ongoing task and support. I'm impressed you have a youth co-chair. I think that's dynamite. So just that more time to build the actual roots.
Yeah, I would quickly add, I don't think that we were able to get into as granular of detail, which in a plan I think is needed. The best implementation, like the best policies will fail during implementation. And so to me, putting that on paper, and I wish we would have been more detailed in particular around flaring, and probably pushing more specifically for like larger emissions. It was a struggle. We would push for a number and the air just would say, well, this is more realistic. And it was constantly a compromise of what was realistic. And so I think that collaborative partnership is really needed, the mutual points of concern of like, what are the realistic milestones that are going to be there. We really wanted Just Transition to be part of ours. It became a goal. And it was met pretty contentiously from many, many stakeholders involved. And from there, I think what we settled on, we have Just Transition. It is a goal. It is one of the strategies through fuel refining. We have a Just Transition preamble. And what we aligned on was to educate members around a Just Transition. It wasn't not necessarily within the authority of the Air District to take on a Just Transition. That would be the city of Richmond or the county. So we do want to work and leverage those stakeholder groups and regulatory agents and government agencies. And yet we had to like take a step back and realize this is just AB 617 SERPs are one tool in the environmental justice toolkit. It will not save us. So to me, it really was more about like level setting our expectations. And I'm really excited that we have Just Transition, as at least mentioned.
Definitely. Thank you. Alfredo?
Yeah, I would say, like, I think in the original kind of blueprint, the goal is for this process to take a year, or at least when we started, the goal was for this process to be around a year from like first meeting to plan adoption, if I'm remembering that right. And that's ridiculous. That was absolutely ridiculous. We're nowhere near that timeline. And I wish that having known that we would really, really like that having 3 years to write this plan was what was going to happen, I think we could have done a better job at I think planning a little better in terms of like knowing that we have this time, like we can do more, we can go deeper. But it was kind of like, okay, we're pushing against the deadline. Like, oh, it turns out we can extend a little longer, and then we can extend a little longer. But like I think, knowing that you can really take your time. Obviously, like it's important for us to stick to a timeline and for do this in a timely manner. But I would say like really like sorry Air District, but like sometimes I think we can put aside these anxieties around like time and meeting deadlines when really what matters most is making sure that like the community is really being engaged in a deep way, and that community members are able to follow along, because I think one of the shortcomings early on was just that like the kind of a lot of information early on, a lot of learning, and that obviously is really difficult for all of us to do at the same pace. And so sometimes folks would check out and check back in later. I think with knowing that we had time, we could have been a little more intentional with how we handled the educational piece.
Thank you. Yeah, so time, that's come up in our process a lot, and community involvement and education has also come up a lot, and then also detail. So thank you all for that. So this is our last question before we get into the open Q&A. So yeah, feel free to keep it brief and then we can kind of get into the larger conversation. But how did you all build momentum and have cross collaboration with the community and also key government agencies and players during your process?
I'll jump in quickly. I think because we're not an anchored CSC, so ours is very different. We're all individuals coming in, so we're not attached to a CBO. And I think that's different from West Oakland and East Oakland. So us individually, when we did recruitment, it was super strategic. When there was a government representative that was transitioning, we didn't want just the next government representative. We wanted to have an interview and see if they were really, really going to engage the way that we needed them to do to be a liaison. And so we went through an interview process so we could feel like we trust this person they have a framework around community centeredness, environmental justice. They're not just doing it because it's the day of checking off the list.
Thank you. Richard or Alfredo?
I'd had I think what was really important was to start making those connections. I think because of the same reason that Marisol mentioned, that like we didn't really have an anchor org, it's really important to start making those connections with like key decision makers early on. I think we were, in some cases a little lucky. Like I think both Marisol and I have a pretty good working relationship with like John Joya, who's our county supervisor. And so, that resource was there, but, starting to talk with like, your city council people, your like local decision makers that work at those agencies, I think is super helpful. Like, once the ideas were kind of fleshed out in the strat or starting to flesh out in the strategies, I think really early on, we started connecting with the Richmond City Council members and San Pablo City Council members and folks in the North Richmond Municipal Advisory Committee, who's their like sort of county government municipal board. But like having those connections like early on and being able to get like commitments from the city, I think is really important. And just making sure that like throughout the whole way that like we're on the same page. Because like I during these like the final kind of like board of directors adoption meetings, like one of the things that came up was like the understanding that like in our plan there are a lot of things that the air district does not really have jurisdiction to implement themselves, and these are strategies that are going to rely on CARB, on the city of Richmond, the city of San Pablo, knowing that this is coming up ahead of time is really helpful for all of us.
Thank you, Alfredo. Yeah, Richard?
I'm not sure how translatable this is, but by the time the AB 617 convening was happening in West Oakland, we'd already been gathering around the table for 10 or 12 years for most of the same folks. So it's not, there's already some built-in momentum. What maintains momentum, though, I think, is there's a clear tone which comes out of the West Oakland leadership of continuity and commitment and relationship, meaning we will, you will, we will all be working together is what comes across. Do not even try and step away from the table because we will drag you back to the table. And also, I don't know if it's translatable, but I mean, West Oakland, there's like a real finite defined identity. What is West Oakland? And I don't know what the boundaries of the East Oakland project are. in Richmond, I mean, just blows my mind to even try and think about it. But so there's sort of an advantage there that was built in calling it the West Oakland. You know, it was tidy. I mean, difficult and complex, but well defined.
Yeah, thank you all. Definitely hearing some key things like around strategy and being strategic. Always having the community involved and also having a sense just internally of kind of like what we really want to achieve. Um, yeah, so that's kind of our core questions. Thanks again. And like I said, next part is kind of open discussion. So we're gonna have this until 6:58, just so everyone can kind of think about time. Just a reminder, I know there's probably a lot of questions. So, one mic, whether you're in person or on Zoom, also step up, step back. And we're also gonna trade off between folks online and folks in person. I also will maybe cut people off if things are getting longer just to prioritize other people's questions. And we do want to prioritize the East Oakland CSC, but we also invite guests to ask their questions after East Oakland members have had a chance to voice theirs. So before I get into kind of the drafted questions, is there anyone online or in person that has a question right now? Okay.
Yo puedo empezar, sí.
I can start.
Okay, I know Marina, yeah, unmuted, and then also I saw Carol. Did Marina have a question? And I don't hear the interpreters, if so. But I think I'll pass it to Carol, and then we can see if Marina had a question.
Hi, yeah, thanks. This is really super helpful. I appreciate you all being here. I think my main question is, when you did the implementation, or you're doing the implementation and planning things, did you find that most of your solutions were like policies or procedures, or were they sort of like hard things like building, construction, things like that? That's really what I wanted to know. Thanks.
I can answer for the West Oakland, kind of both. Some of the things were policies and procedures that especially policies for the city. And we always had a strong presence, still do, of the city government at the West Oakland table, especially from the planning department. And they were willing to go back and actually help draft. And I think some of the policies have actually been implemented. But there's some actual stuff on the ground in terms of greening. I mean, actually plant a tree, that sort of a thing, too, going on. And a lot of the other problems are much stickier and longer term. It remains to be seen what progress will look like.
Thanks.
I'll quickly add, for a lot of hours, it was just looking at CARB's authority and trying to really take advantage of their authority. So if there were specific rules, compliance and enforcement, within BACMed, we were really looking at, you have a flaring rule, you have this rule, this is super important for us to be able to find a community-centered process and kind of interrupt the rules that have been happening siloed with community. I think one of the ways, like the penalty policy, we wrote a penalty policy long before it had come to the air district and just got passed by the board of directors, and we had advocated for that. And so focusing here, but then also realizing that there was interdepartmental within the air agency and cross-governmental strategies that needed to take place.
Yeah, I'll add like an example, I think, that comes to me of one. Because yeah, like both folks already said, like it's really a mix of both. Like I think the penalty policy is a great example of like a policy recommendation that came from this. Another that's more so on like the building or like best practices type thing was exactly that. Under our commercial and industrial sources bucket of strategies, one of the recommended actions was to update best management practices, which are like essentially just like best practices for construction sites to use for to like keep dust down whenever there's like trucks moving. For example, one of the recommendations was like revising those best practices that the cities recommend, and seeing like is this still the best practice? Are there better things that we can recommend? To to reduce exposure in the long term. So it's a good mix of both tangible policies and practices that we can recommend to change.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Carol, for the question. Lots of strategy and intentionality for sure. Anyone in person with a question?
Yes, we have Cynthia. I'll pass you the mic. Hi, can y'all hear me on Zoom? Oh, perfect. Okay, so hopefully this question isn't too complicated. Thank you so much for your time. I really value everything you've all said. I think for me, I often find a disconnect between the folks like us that live in East Oakland and experience these disparities and bigger institutions that are more on the macro level. And so as we are finding ways to work together, and we've definitely had our challenges, how best do when you all were in your process, how did you identify the different like areas? So right now, we're learning about transportation, but all of us come from so many different backgrounds. Like, how did you as a collective pick your focus areas? Did you all physically write the report, or was it all the air district? I guess I'm having a hard time picturing how this actually becomes a reality and trying to understand how you all collaborated better together.
I can offer a little bit of the West Oakland experience, and what I would suggest to make use of is you've got Anna Lee, you've got Greg Nudd, maybe others from the district that go all the way back on the West Oakland, the AB 617 plan experience. And my recollection, maybe there was more of a methodology, is really, I want to say popcorn, but it was really brainstorming what all to do, and came up with dozens of things that seemed to me doing. And it was only after that that we started to scrape them into piles. We didn't start with the overall category. Let's look at mobile and what all can we do. It was kind of like, what about this? What about that? But what also helped was we had excellent facilitation, which helped keep the discussion moving and going creative. But it didn't start with the categories. It started with, oh my God, what needs doing?
Marisol, I see you're dropping some stuff in the chat. Did you want to elaborate, or Alfredo, or anything on the Richmond plan?
I think it was all community centered. I think y'all are doing a community SharePoint already. Is that right? Yeah. So we did the same thing. We also looked at the air district's complaint system. We interviewed folks. We looked at the in-person mapping as well. And so very similar to what y'all are doing. And then essentially aggregated all of that data to see what were the top topics. Of course, there were thousands of topics, like there's hundreds of topics that we could go after, but like fuel refining and specifically asthma, or I think it was flaring, what came up like 89 times in the complaint and other systems that we aggregated. It essentially went after public health, it went to number 2. And so we just ranked them quickly and we're like, these are the 5. That's all we can do. Our capacity is limited. Our knowledge, the authority of Air District is limited. This is how we move it.
Yeah. I mean, not much to add from the Richmond side. Very much from Pinpoint. What are the kind of common concerns for the community? What are the common places where exposure will be higher, like where community members meet and congregate. And figuring out what makes sense in terms of how to categorize these things, and that was not fixed from the beginning, from beginning to end. We had this like cross-cutting issues bucket that like shifted forms a bunch of times. Like I think towards the end, a lot of those strategies ended up in other existing buckets, but we still at the end of the plan that we adopted still has cross-cutting issues kind of section that encompasses things that were, for example, like in the complaint system, like the complaint system, like the air district's website, and alert system, and like ways that could be more accessible. It was a mix of like looking at information from like the social pinpoint, and the complaint system. A lot of us have been advocates in the community for a really long time, and so there's also kind of that like community knowledge that the data doesn't always show you on maps.
Thank you. That's really helpful because we went through a similar process as Richmond North Richmond with the social pinpoint and kind of drafting our buckets from there. And that's kind of where we are now, is like strategy development. I know Marina put something in the chat. I'm wondering if an interpreter or if someone will, perfect. Thank you, Masam. So Marina has a question. How long has this plan or strategy been going on for each community, and exactly how are you able to educate their community?
Quickly, so 3 years, we have not began implementation yet. Ours just got voted on by the board of directors and it'll go up to CARB. And so we're still very much in the community engagement process. At the very beginning, because of the social pinpoint, that was a major key piece of community building. And then as we really honed in, started writing strategies, doing like research and development of those strategies, I think we lacked a little bit of community engagement. Unless it was strategic, we would do strategic outreach to say, there is an expert on flaring in the community. How can they help? There's an expert on exposures or physicians for social responsibility. How can this help, like, and move forward? So it was more strategic community engagement. And then finally, as the plan started getting towards being publicly available, and that's when we started community engagement really ramping up community engagement, doing presentations at schools, at like CBE memberships, at unions, at wherever we could, using our network to share and engage the community. I think we, in our plan, wrote very specific ways that we will continue to engage the community. So we have a blueprint of bringing Indigenous leaders and different young youth and different groups into the space. But ours has really been like community driven because we're not anchored to a CBO.
Thank you. Alfredo, anything you wanted to add for Richmond, North Richmond?
I think that covered it pretty well.
For sure. Richard, anything for West Oakland?
West Oakland, I guess the plan's been in place for about 5 years. I think it was adopted till into 2019, and shortly thereafter fell into the COVID, virtual sort of arrangement. I don't think, could be wrong, but the community engagement strategy there is probably less defined or articulated than what Marisol just laid out. I think that really sounds great. The meetings are all open. I noticed once we went to the virtual format, actually there was larger participation once we started having open Zoom meetings, and they're well managed and well facilitated. So that in itself was community education. And at every session, there's always been working sessions. Y'all come on around the table. Nothing very little about now, but here's the steering committee and here's not when it came to problem solving. So we've recently reorganized and changed the process some, but I'm impressed with what you're doing in Richmond. That sounds great.
Yeah, love that we're all learning from each other continuously. And community engagement has been a big focus, especially from the co-chairs here in East Oakland, of really wanting to get the community involved and invested in the overall AB 617 process. We have about 8 more minutes, so maybe time for 1 or 2 more questions. Oh, Anna?
Michaela, we have 2 hands raised in person, so I can pass it to Gabrielle and then Mr. Charles.
Thank you. You might have touched on this a little bit, but in terms of issues that are outside of the Air District's authority, more specific, I think you mentioned that a little bit, but how did you engage other entities? Was it, and kind of who took responsibility for that? Because, let's say we want to engage the city of Oakland, or, in your case, Richmond or whatever. You talked about having relationships with the city council member. And I guess what would you recommend to get not just like people showing up at meetings, but to actually have like some sort of documented buy-in from other entities outside of the air district who could actually make this successful?
Quickly. So we have government representatives, one from each of y'all have government representatives, I'm assuming. Yeah, okay. So that's your liaison to anything government. You should be calling on them for everything and anything. That's what we essentially did. We also knew that the mayor, there's a little bit of research and community knowledge that you need to know. The mayor of Richmond tapped a 20-year operator who was with USW Local 5 to be his chief of staff. And when there was turnover in our government representative, we were strategic in asking for him because we needed his wealth of knowledge. We saw that there was a gap, and we were like, how powerful would it be if we actually had somebody with 20 years of operating at Richmond Chevron Refinery come into the space and give us a workers, as well as because of his network, he tapped in residents who also work at the refinery, and they have been sharing as well. And so your government representative should be very well tapped into folks, as well as I think for the county, we have we have different representatives, and I think that's really important. If y'all need to expand your charter, like we expanded our charter, we've moved went lower to the charter. It's a very fluid charter. So to make adjustments and who needs to be at the table and when. We also have industry representatives, so government representatives and industry representatives at the table so that we could understand where they were coming from. And so like, I guess a little bit of research and like who are the key players in your community. Community power mapping would be really helpful if y'all haven't done that. Could be.
Definitely. Alfredo, anything you want to add for Richmond, North Richmond, San Pablo?
Yeah, I'll say in terms of like the like documented ways or ways to document buy-in from like partners, government partners, one of the things that committee members spent a lot of energy and time doing was like sitting down with the city council members and their staff and like talking through the plan. And I think both the city of San Pablo and the city of Richmond passed resolutions in support of the AB 617 plan. And so that was kind of like one of the ways that it could be like very clear, like, okay, like you understand that like this is something that we're leaning on you to do. And this is a way of city council to say like, yes, we support this. We're going to commit our resources and our energy to implementing these strategies that we are, tasked to do so. Politicians, in terms of like also like getting to sit with them, like politicians, we politicians. And if you tell them like, we have an opportunity for you to contribute to cleaning the air in our community, like they'll be happy to sit down with you. Especially it's really helpful to have like the air district directly helping us make these connections. So definitely like use the resources that you have available.
Thank you, Alfredo. Richard, anything you want to add really brief?
Yeah, the West Oakland plan, and maybe Greg or Anna knows better, but I'd say over half the measures do not have the district in the primary role. And it goes to our understanding how to figure out which of our measures are ripe is how we think we're ripe for motion. It has to do with, we need to understand for that particular strategy, what actually needs to happen, who needs to be involved in making that happen, and how can we engage them? And sometimes it's going to their political masters, like, the city council or whatever. But really, with or without the power map, it's understanding the players and playing it. So some of the bigger measures we're really not getting to now because they're not right. But I think what I've heard is that's pretty much what we've been trying to do in West Oakland, but really understanding what's ready to be done and not wasting time on a whole lot of stuff that's not ready to be done.
Thank you. That's all really important. So yeah, I think we have one final question from Mr. Charles. We have 2 minutes left, so I'm gonna ask us to keep everything a little on the tighter side just for timing. But yeah, Mr. Charles.
Okay, I want to thank you, Alfredo. Oh, first of all, Michaela, you're doing a great job facilitating, and I wanted to let you know that. But Alfredo, you mentioned some of the obstacles involved in the very beginning. And I wanted to ask this question to all three of you, because first of all, I like to say this, that agency doesn't always respect our transferable skill sets. I was a gang member, but I was also one who could go to war, and I was also one that could negotiate treaties. And so I just want agency to understand that our life experience is a transferable skill set. So please respect that from now on. So Alfredo, I want to know, and this for all three of you again, what did you mean by you finally transitioned to community leadership? Because you guys been active CERP for a while now. And how do you define community center?
Yeah, so that specific point, I think that might have been Marisol, but that specific point, I think is in reference to how we governed ourselves, like actually by like the bylaws that we had. We were originally created as a board appointed committee, meaning that every decision that we made had to go through the board of directors to be approved. Like any charter changes, any changes in how we run our meetings, and when things are due, what's sent out. Like at the end of the day, it has to be greenlit by the board of directors, and that was really annoying. And so after a lot of like engaging with CSC members and like ideating, like how could we change this, we decided to ask the board of directors like officially to like quote unquote disband us so that we could reconvene as a community governed steering committee, meaning that we no longer had to be appointed and approved by the board of directors. We would still have the support and like the exact same relationship really with your district, but we could essentially, govern ourselves. Yeah, we were no longer a Brown Act body, which was really difficult for community members to operate within that like framework.
Wow.
Thank you, Alfredo. Yeah, I know Brown Act is a whole different beast within itself. Richard, anything you wanted to add? It sounds like Marisol, you kind of agree with Alfredo. Okay, cool. Thanks for keeping all that brief. Yeah, so much I feel that we've learned. And yeah, I think a lot of advice, a lot of similarities and differences. Yeah, I'm really excited to look over the North Richmond San Pablo plan as it just got confirmed like a few weeks ago. And yeah, West Oakland, we've been using that as a model for a while now. I think especially because a lot of the solutions aren't housed within the Air District, and we're really interested in doing that in East Oakland as well. But yeah, we know it's a lot to work with agencies, especially when it's like people are on the ground literally dying right now. So yeah, we definitely applaud y'all for all of your like continued work, all of the continued work in the implementation phase, which is like the next 5, 6, 7+ years. So yeah, thank you all for being here. Hopefully this is definitely not going to be the last time we talk, because it sounds like we were all learning stuff even just from each other right now. But yeah, I think that concludes our panel. We definitely will follow up, and I think if East Oakland has additional questions, we can definitely find another space to kind of have community conversations and collaboration spaces as well. So yeah, definitely let's give a round of applause. Alfredo's dropping his personal stuff in the chat. Yeah, so we'll definitely keep track of that. Yeah, and also we get to chat just like community on community and talk. So yeah, thanks everyone for a really great panel. I hope folks enjoyed it as well. And for the rest of our meeting, we're gonna go into a 10-minute break. We actually ended on time so we can have our break today. So we're gonna have a 10-minute break, and then we're actually gonna talk about strategy development for the second half of the meeting. So yeah, I'll pass it to someone in the in-person room for music and break time.
Thanks, Michaela. Yeah, as Michaela mentioned, we just have a 10-minute break now. Thank you.
Yep.
Testing. Hello. Cool.
Hey everyone, coming back from the break. Thank you. We have Brian here from CARB to tell us about transportation, mobile sources, and other SERP strategies. Go ahead, Brian.
Awesome. Thank you. And before I start, I did want to thank you all for letting me be part of this conversation. I appreciate that. And I was gonna, since you're letting me in your space, I was gonna share a little background on me, but then I realized I am kind of boring. And you all brought up some things that really resonated with me with your questions. And one Cynthia mentioned was this idea of public agencies like being at the macro level and not experiencing what's happening with residents like on the street level. And it reminded me when I was working with West Oakland, I was putting together this presentation. I was super excited. I was sharing it with some of the co-leads, and I had my slide deck ready, and I showed the first picture, and the first comment was, well, that's great, but why don't you have a picture of West Oakland? It would be good. I'm like, I looked at my picture, and I had the port, and it was taken from like an airplane. I'm like, oh, did I zone out? Is that Long Beach? Like, what do I do? And I'm like, oh, that's West Oakland. And then I realized what I was being told is that we don't need this 5,000-foot view on what's happening in these communities where you're mapping stuff out. You need to be down and see pictures of the community, residents, and be on the street. So yeah, we're learning. We're trying to get there. So yeah, with that, I can move on and start this presentation. Cool. And so today I'm going to talk about a little bit about mobile source authorities, and then getting to some sample strategies from other communities that I thought might apply to East Oakland. So this is just the kind of a primer. Oh, shoot. Should I close this so it's not covering it? Is that okay? Okay. Oh, it's still up there. Yeah, so give you an idea about the public agencies that right now like regulate air quality. So you have the US EPA on the federal level, and they regulate things like trains, ships, and planes. So those things that like cross state lines. And then at the state level, CARB, so where I'm at the Air Resources Board, we regulate emissions from anything that basically has wheels on it that moves. So cars, trucks, buses, things like that. And even stuff at like, and this is an example of overlapping authorities. I know that the airport's a big concern with this community, and we don't regulate planes, but then all like the shuttle buses and the little tugs that push the planes around and carry luggage, we can regulate that. So electrifying that. So there are some overlaps where we can have impacts on the sources that we don't necessarily historically regulate. And then on the more local and regional level, we have the Bay Area Air Quality Management District that really regulates the stationary sources. So things that stay put, whether it's residential wood stoves, refineries, chrome platers, laundromats, like things like that. And so just a quick kind of background on Assembly Bill 617 in CARB. So now statewide, we have CARB that writes rules and regulations and runs incentive programs throughout the state. And then regionally, we have air districts. There's 35 of them. And right in green, I have outlined Bay Area, which does those stationary sources and takes our regional stuff. And what AB 617 added on to was that this collaboration between state and regional public agencies was going to be driven by the community. So here we have the community of East Oakland here. And I do want to take a moment to say that, like, I don't want to discount all the work that was done before AB 617 existed. You just heard from three members, like Richard and Marisol and Alfredo have been around doing work way before 617 existed. So this is just kind of putting the law. West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project, CBE in East Oakland, like they've been doing this work for a really long time, but this law actually kind of put it in writing to make this state and regional agency work with community to write these plans. So to go over some of the main tools and strategies that we have as a regulatory agency. So on the left side, that's kind of our first one. CARB and the air districts can write rules and regulations. So these are kind of like the stick, like the punitive part, you could say, of the way we work. And then that middle one is incentives. So this is where we can actually incentivize industry and even residences to buy a cleaner or zero emission equipment sooner than required by law. So that's kind of, those things kind of work together. Is that in the one prong, you may make a rule, but that takes a while to phase in. So that is that you incentivize people that do it sooner than needed. And the big thing with incentives, you can't use an incentive to meet a law. You have to be doing something earlier or cleaner than the law requires. And then that third one is enforcement. So the only way regs work is that if you make sure people are compliant. So that's kind of another big lever or tool we have is enforcement of these regs. So the next four slides I have, I try to tie just some examples of strategies and other plans and other SERPs based on the focus areas that you all have been working on. So when we look at transportation and mobile sources, this first example is a rural, and the concern was warehousing. You know, this is in South Coast, which I know is also a concern here. And what the Air District did to implement that is they developed an indirect source rule. And just in case you all aren't familiar with that term, so a direct source would be like my car is putting out emissions and pollutions when I'm driving. It's directly creating it. The idea with an indirect source rule is that you have like a warehouse, which is almost a magnet. It itself doesn't create a ton of emissions, but it's drawing heavy duty trucks to it. So the idea with this rule was that warehouses would have to reduce emissions because they were bringing trucks there, whether it's like adding solar panels, letting trucks plug in. So they don't have to run their cooling like their refrigerant trucks while they're parked there, using zero emission like forklifts and things like that. So that was a way to work on those emission sources like a warehouse that itself doesn't produce a ton of pollution, but can draw pollution to the area. Oh, another neat thing about that is a warehouse could sponsor air filtration for the homes around it too, insulating air filtration to help the community as part of that rule. Oh, so here's another rule. So now the last one was a rule. This is an enforcement strategy that also has to do with transportation. And the concern here was heavy duty truck emissions. So this is a strategy that we're enforcing throughout communities. And a lot of communities have done this. And what we're doing, it's called our PEAK system. So it's Portable Emissions Acquisition System Monitoring is what that acronym stands for. You can see the setup here. So what this is, that's that little arm going over actually real-time measures emissions from the truck. And then you can see in the front next to the small white van, there's like a camera on a tripod, and it reads the license plate. So you have these trucks can drive underneath. Oh, sure, I had to wrap up. I'll go faster, sorry. The cool thing about this is you capture the truck right away and the emissions right away, and you can find if they're a violator. So that's a neat one. I have two more. I'll go really fast. Okay. This one kind of is transportation, but also related to public health. A lot of communities wanted to see cleaner school buses because kids are being directly exposed and these buses drive in your community, right? So it's not only the emissions, it's where they're happening. So they created an incentive program, which is another lever to get these zero emission school buses in the communities. And the final one, I wanted to add this because we mentioned land use, right? How we don't control that. That's all local, like local cities and counties. But one thing we have done is we have CARB has commented on any proposed projects and evaluated the emissions that may be caused by those projects and offered up like mitigation, like strategies to reduce it. And we've submitted those to the local land use agencies to hopefully get them to improve those projects. And finally, I want to show this to you all. There's a link. If anybody wants to see, we have a strategies tool that takes all the hundreds and hundreds of strategies throughout all the SERPs that you can search. So I want to demo it, but I talk too much. So I can send you all the link. And if you ever want a demo on it, like, let me know. Yeah. And we can come back and do it, or we can do it at a separate meeting or do it online. And finally, and that's just my contact information that you have. And Jennifer McGovern also is going to be working with us in this community, but her daughter was graduating, so she couldn't be here. But anyway, sorry I ran over, Alicia. I tried. Yeah. And any questions, feel free to give me a call or email me.
Hello? Okay, just wanted to check my audio here. So I wanted to bring back strategy, our follow-up from our past steering committee meetings for transportation and mobile sources. So this is just a reminder of our focus areas, the way that we're organizing strategies. And tonight we are focusing on transportation and mobile sources concerns. So I'll just briefly go over our instructions. And first, as a follow-up from our strategy development work that we've done in the past steering committee meetings, we wanted to center transportation and mobile sources focus area. In the past, we heard a lot from you on the concerns surrounding the Oakland International Airport and we will have a future tour opportunity so that we can hear more. However, we need more information from you on the other concerns that are housed in this focus area. So this is why we're bringing back these two subtopics. We have one, the freeways and highways, and two, commercial trucking and truck-related businesses. The reason we chose these two subtopics is because they rose to the top in terms of concerns that community was most concerned about. We looked at the community mapping project, the things we've heard over past steering committee meetings, all to say that these two rose to the top. And they're also the concerns that most impact your community. So we have set up for you an open house format where participants can self-select into these two subtopics. You have about 20 minutes to work on this with a facilitator and note taker to help you support brainstorming. We encourage you to reference materials that we provided, and we'll also have support staff here to assist with any questions you have. I'll quickly go over the resources we have for you. So we have the strategy development resources reference guide that you've seen in the past about that has past presentations and important information for you to support the breakouts. We have the transportation and mobile sources draft list of community concerns. And we also have the Oakland International Airport example that shows, it's a good resource example to show the brainstorming that you all have worked on at past steering committee meetings. I will quickly pass it over to Steve to go over the emissions inventory slides reference as well. Steve?
Yes, thank you, Alicia. So folks may recall that back at the August steering committee meeting, we took a look at the emissions inventory that the Air District and CARB developed for East Oakland. And what we've done in this packet of slides that's serving as a resource for tonight's meeting is we pulled out emission inventory information related to mobile sources in particular. So that includes on-road vehicles like cars and trucks, and off-road sources like aircraft and construction equipment. And these slides have some charts that show how those different kinds of mobile sources contribute to emissions of air toxics and fine particulate matter in the community. And one big takeaway is that mobile sources are a key emitter of diesel particulate matter and other toxics that are really contributing to cancer risk in East Oakland, which we know is a big concern. So I hope that this will be a good resource as you begin to brainstorm strategies around this topic area.
Thank you, Steve. So we can now transition over to breakout sessions. Mossam will break us out into the online groups, and we will show you where, for the in-person folks, we are using the classroom and the conference room, and we'll transition over to there.
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Michaela. Okay, thanks everyone for your participation and engagement in the breakout sessions. Just quickly wanted to go over next steps with you all. So in June, we plan on working on brainstorming in our next focus area that we want to focus on, which is the commercial and industrial sources. CBE and the Air District will synthesize the brainstorming that we've heard from you today to form concern statements. And we aim to bring back those concern statements at a future steering committee meeting to start developing strategies with you all. And how that may look like in practice is we take our focus area where we've identified our shared concerns. We take information we know about the concerns to form concern statements. And this shows that each concern can lead to multiple strategies, and each strategy can lead to multiple actions. As you have seen and heard from today, there are multiple ways of getting to address those concerns, and these are just some various types of SERP strategies and actions that you see in the orange box to your right. And to help prepare for June, we wanted to share a resource from our emissions inventory to get you thinking about the next focus area we want you to work on, commercial and industrial sources. So I will pass it to Steve to briefly describe this, and we have it as a handout for you to take home and also have it available online, which we'll drop into the chat. Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. And as we look at commercial and industrial sources in coming meetings, a lot of those are going to be permitted by the Air District. And so we want to begin to give you a sense of how some of those sources are impacting the community in terms of what kind of pollution they're emitting, and also where might there be opportunities to mitigate some of those emissions. So this packet that's being handed out is something that the district and CBE work together to summarize emissions from permitted sources in the community. And it also outlines some different options for addressing emissions from permitted sources. And so some of our rule development folks, for example, included some material on upcoming rules and how the rulemaking process can help to address emissions from sources that are permitted by the district. So we'll be talking more about it. But we hope this will be a good resource to help you kind of prepare and get your thoughts flowing around this topic area.
Thanks, Steve. And if you have any questions, please find me or another support staff. We really wanted to maximize your time in the breakout sessions as well as for the panel. So we'll stick around briefly after our meeting during our cleanup in person. And as always, we're available by email. And I will pass it on to our co-chairs, Mr. Charles or Ayana, for their announcement.
Alicia, can you help with slides?
So I guess y'all just saw Ayana told me that I'm gonna do it. Thank you. We just want to announce the fact that our grant with CARB is coming to fruition, and we have a number of community members from the CSC that we would like to participate. We are asking you to we want to do one-on-ones because this will be a 2-year commitment. And we want to make sure that we get dedicated, motivated people that we know going to do this work and is capable of doing this work. But this is the beautiful part of it. All of the community members that participate in this will have the opportunity to be trained to learn, paid to learn how to read air monitoring information, how to use the equipment, and how to input the data. We are also going to be working, hopefully, to get our people hazmat training for those who want it, so that they can take these talents with them outside of this space. But more than anything, we want to empower our community members to be able to do this work after us and to be able to train other people to do this work so then y'all can retire. Because this is about growing other environmentalists in the best way that we possibly can. And me and Ayana just wanted to make sure that through self-determination, through community determination, we showed you that we could work outside to get something done while we still working inside to get something done.
And developing skills while we do it. So we wanted to make you guys a priority on this grant. You guys were the first thing on our minds when it was proposed to us. So we would like for you guys to participate with this. It's not only what we do here, you know, we're actually implementing what we learn out there. So we would really love for you guys, our CSC members, to have first dibs on this and participate. Like community engagement is a big part of what we're trying to bring here. And I think that would be a great stepping stone to do so. Charles.
We also have Mr. Bill Crottinger here. And I would like for him to be able to tell you guys about an upcoming event we're planning for the CSC.
Thank you, Charles. Charles approached us and talked about an interest we might have in planting some trees around our businesses. We are going to have, I think, a test planting on the 30th of this month. Everyone that wants to come can. We'll make sure that information gets out, and then there will be actual planting. And then Charles, today, this is not me, this is Charles. How many other businesses can we include, but specifically along the San Leandro corridor? So it's really not me, it's Charles. So
Thank you guys. And really quickly, just wanted to close out and remind people that I sent a poll yesterday to fill out an Oakland airport tour event put on by the port. So please look in your email. I sent that yesterday. And we want to make sure that we have, your spots, so yeah, there's instructions there in the Google form that I sent. And the polls are due by May 20th. So please fill those out as soon as possible. Again, there's instructions in the Google form there. And yeah, thanks for this opportunity. And thank y'all.
Mr. Charles, can you close us out?
This thing on. I want to thank everybody again for a great meeting. We had barbecue, and speaking in Oakland terms, we had some great barbecue. We had a good meal. We had some intriguing and conversation, and I hope that we've come to some solutions. And I want to thank everybody for showing up, and see you at our next meeting, number 20 in June.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good night, everyone.